Mic off. Mic on.
Hey, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about scaling and abilities, particularly for Battlemasters here in here in Lost Ark. I've done most of the math for Triple Punch. That's this skill, 1, 2, 3. Um, and I want to extrapolate from there. I plan to run some more of these numbers, but I just thought it might be useful to to talk about a couple of things. So, first of all, based on this Inven data. This is not for Battlemasters. This is for Infighter. I think it might be for Soulmaster. I forget. They went through and did very similar calculations, trying to understand the DPS at different attack power levels, and they make some basic claims. They say that the damage scaling is linear, so it's a base damage plus a multiplier plus an efficiency times your attack power. Um, you can see you can see that here generates DPS, and you can see how the DPS they say changes at these different power levels. I followed most of it. I tracked it down. I couldn't get where they were finding some of these efficiencies, right? So here they claim that they've got these numbers. This is the power efficiency, and this is the cooldown. I'm not sure where this came from. As you can see, it's hard coded. Um, so yeah, so I think they did simple division. We went a little bit deeper. So let's talk about what we're trying to figure out. The basic question here is, well, there's actually three questions. The first basic question is just how do skills scale with level and ability power? Are there sweet spots, Are you are you better off point-wise, ignoring tripods at 7 points than 10, for example? So what we did is we took this triple punch ability and we recorded the tooltip damage for each hit at each breakpoint tripod level at three different attack powers. Those were generated by, one of them is by taking off all of our gear except for our weapon, right? And that's the 189 attack power that we see here. Then we put back on these, then we put back on this gear. I missed my chest. There we go. This is the 366 number that we see here, and then the 481 is everything I've got. 481. At each point we recorded this tooltip number, so this is 428, 428, 1016. This is with all of our gear on. You can see that that's the level 4 number, and let's just confirm that, so level 4, right? Yeah, so let's take a look at how we actually scale. All right, so first of all, adding levels obviously increases the damage, but you'll notice there's a much larger damage increase between these first ones, and you can actually see that in the base damage. So this is the damage that the skill would do at my level with 0 attack power. This is a linear equation, so we're all going back to our 4th grade math or whatever. So y equals mx plus b. This is your b. This is the intercept, and then the scaling coefficients. This is the coefficient on your attack power that increases the damages here. So level 1 skill, this is a skill with no points in it, in this case triple punch, has 0.5 scaling. So for every point of attack power here we get about a half point of hit damage. At level 4 it goes up to 0.68, so we get about 10% more out of our attack power. So it scales up there, and we see that we gained about 60 flat. So we went to about almost 300%, of our base damage. So our base damage tripled-ish, maybe 2.5 times. And our coefficient went up by 10%, which is about a 20% increase, just eyeballing these numbers. Then from level 4 to level 7, we go from 0.68 to 0.72, a much smaller increase. You'll notice the coefficient gains really slow down after that first investment, and that happens here as well, 0.72 to 0.75. So the biggest increase in gains from your item level actually come from those first 4 points. 4 points are really worth it, especially as you get to higher and higher item level, right? The coefficient matters more and more the bigger your item level. The lower your item level, the more the base matters. So just having level 10 in something. Because look at the base damage difference. Level 1 to level 10, right? So we go from 30 to 140. It's like 5x, right? So that's that's pretty big. But see, we do get the 3x almost for that initial. We get 2.5 there. Then we go to 4. Then we go to 5x the base damage. So putting points in the skills gives us a big boost in base damage, and and by putting the max points, we got a 50% increase in the scaling. So this is just the base skill. Now, our tripods obviously affect this, right? So this tripod, this is sort of a good one to demonstrate with. So this one is 131. So this is your typical applies armor break 10%. 3, which is 50% more damage to bosses. In theory, we don't know if I don't know if this works or not. It doesn't on these dummies. Might work in the actual game though. And then 1. This is your last hit does 50% increased damage. So we apply that 50% increased damage. You see like 340 to 519 to this last hit, and you can actually see what happens to the DPS at each level here. So the damage goes up, and the coefficient changes. So our last hit coefficient goes from 1.3 to 2, and goes all the way up to 2.7 ish here. So you notice that this multiplier, by multiplying the last hit, scales that coefficient nicely, right? Um, it scales the base damage by 50% as well, of course. So yeah, so this is the DPS. This is the sort of these base damages. This is the base damage. Actually, there's a mistake here. This last hit should be increased by 50%. Sorry, that's just a copy and paste thing. Let's fix that. Oops. There we go. So yeah, so that's what we're working on. That's one piece, is taking a look at this scaling, seeing how things scale up. I'm going to be hopefully finding the time to go through multiple skills and really test them, because we have some potentially interesting interactions. Um, this is 131. 121 is very interesting. Each hit does 15% increased damage over the previous one. This is going to change our scaling numbers and change the overall efficiency, right? So this is the overall DPS of the skill. The skill has a 6-second cooldown, and then this is the DPS per attack power, right? You can see that the DPS per attack power is decreasing as our item level is going up. I should probably double check this math, but the reason for that is that the increase in DPS is slowing down, since the base isn't, the base matters less and less. So our efficiency is approaching the average efficiency of the 3 hits, and that's the 0.57, 0.57, and 2. So we're coming towards that 0.96. Eventually, if we had a billion attack power or something like some huge number of attack power, the base damage would almost not matter at all, right? So this is one thing to think about. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is armor shred. I'm going to do a little testing, and that will be in the next video, because I've discovered that armor shred isn't exactly a flat damage increase, right? So 10 ignores 10% of armor. That's not just 10% more damage. And so I will record that next. To finish up this video, I wanted to talk about weakening damage. Lots of people, especially Battlemasters, have been saying, man, one of the advantages of our class, other than being a buff bot, which does seem to be what people have decided our best role is, the feeling is that our DPS is low. I'm hoping by doing all of these coefficients and working out the actual DPS on our skills, we'll discover that we're not that far behind other classes, but no promises on that yet. But we could run a build that has both heavy buffing and heavy weakening damage for bosses. In order to do that, we need to know which skills and which tripods do the most weakening damage. This stuff is really not easy to eyeball, so I did it for two of our more popular weakening skills. So pummel, this thing, this one, is listed as heavy weakening, but the tripods really do make a pretty significant difference. So I went through and did this against the boss, so all of this testing was done against the boss that spawned this way. This boss scales with your level. If you take gear off, its health changes. So it's scaling up and down with you, so this should remain the same. But yeah, so everything was tested. We tried to avoid back attacks in every case. We screenshotted it, lined them up, pixel to pixel along the outside, and then dropped guidelines. And what you can see is that 332 it does the least weakening damage, whereas 221 actually does the most. So we can take a look at like what those are. 332 might not. Yeah, so 332 does the most and 321 does the least. I'm pretty sure I'm in the test zone. I'm not sure why I can't reset abilities. Let's fix that. But anyway, this becomes really clear for instance, our crescent kick, which I'll demonstrate in just a second. But the lowest version of our crescent kick, 231, does this, and then you can see that 221 does almost twice the weakening. I mean, this is an enormous difference. I think that there may be a very powerful weakening build. Other people in the Discord have talked about running a weakening build. I think if we all get together and do a little bit of investigation, we can put together a build that's quite powerful. This is a lot of weakening damage for a single skill. Now, obviously, raid boss and stuff like that have bigger weakening bars, I assume. But nonetheless, I think we can be major contributors to that kind of damage while maintaining strong party buffs. The last part of this video is going to be a discussion of party buffing, because my previous build that I showed off is not exactly the build that I would run today. So we have a set of core and important buffs that really help. The first core buff that you'll find is 4 points in our punch. This applies 10% armor break. We'll discuss armor break in another video, but nonetheless, this is quite good. It's 3 seconds on a 6-second cooldown, but it's actually even better than the 50% uptime that it promises, and I'll show you why. So let's watch the debuffs. It refreshes every time you hit, and the cooldown begins when the animation starts. So watch that cooldown. 1, 2, 3. We get an entire second of the cooldown. So this debuff is actually 4 seconds out of 6, right? That's 2/3 uptime. That's quite good. 66-70% uptime on this 10% armor break is a big deal. Second important debuff is actually here. This one was sort of discovered a little bit more recently in our triple punch, and there's nice overlap here. Again, this is a heavy weakening skill. This skill actually applies reasonable weakening damage as well. But it also applies cutting damage, which is important for bosses like the Scorpion in the second tier of raids. So here we have this crit tripod. In this, so let's take a look at the translation. Right, it says the enemy's critical strike rate is decreased by up to 15% for 3 seconds. This actually increases the chance that they become crit, and I can demonstrate that quite easily. I'm just going to show you how I tested this. I have 0 crit, autoing, never critting. I did this for a while when I was testing. I'm not going to make you sit through it. So you'll see this debuff. So it's not actually 15%. I have to take this off. What it actually does is it stacks 3.7 for some number of these crit debuffs per hit. They stack up. It totals to the same amount, just like our triple punch. You get extra duration because of the duration of the skill, but see, we're critting now. So, given that we're now critting, we can be sure that this is increasing the enemy's chance to crit, not decreasing their chance to crit us. So, this is the second buff. This is a 15% crit buff. It lasts for 3 seconds. Ostensibly, on a 16-second cooldown, the skill itself lasts 2 seconds, so it's actually a 5-second debuff on a 16-second cooldown, so it's got about approximately 30% uptime. Obviously, Whispers is one of our major buffs. You see a lot of builds that only go 7 points into it. This buff gives attack speed. Typically, you take movement speed. There are times when you might want to take other stuff. The normal build is movement speed, and then the mandatory one is the crit in tier 2. The base cooldown on the skill is 30 seconds. However, tier 3 is 10 seconds reduced cooldown. That's a 30% increase in uptime. If we are planning to play a heavy buff style, the full 10 points in here is extremely good. Reducing, and there are other reasons for that as well that we'll get to, but reducing this from 30 to 20 second cooldown is very powerful. So 25% crit buff with 30% uptime. You can see why this is powerful and quite sought after. Next important buff to look at is tier 2 of Super Beatdown or Room Fire or Ultimate Kick, depending on the translation. We typically call it Super Beatdown or SBD. This is the stronger armor break. This is 5 seconds of 30% armor reduction. Really, really powerful. Now this skill scales extremely well with its tier 10. So you often see us take this talent. I'll show you when it cools down, but the downside is in many bosses the animation becomes too slow. So the 7 points are the pure support build. 10 points give us this giant kick that, it gives us some of our big crits and whatnot. Sorry, I guess it's this one. I should have checked. Yeah. An ultra strong kick. Yeah, it should be this one. Whatever. The other core buff for us is this one, our roar. Many people don't put a lot of points in this, and I think that's probably wrong. This skill, its main bonus is the % increase crit for 6 seconds. The crit scales with levels, so it's 10% at level 1 up to 25% at max level. Also, it's got terrific tripods. You will go out of mana running these builds. In a buff build, speed and cooldown reduction is your best stat. Increases your mana consumption even further. So I almost always take 50% mana reduction on this. 2-second duration increase, base 6 seconds. This is a 30% increase in duration, which is great. And then 5 seconds off the cooldown takes it from 25 to 20 seconds. Not as big as the 30% cooldown reduction on Whisper going from 30 to 20. This is only a 20% cooldown reduction going from 25 to 20. However, by putting both of these skills at a 20-second cooldown, it gives us a very powerful natural rotation in which we can pop both of these buffs, this one lasting 8 seconds, this one lasting 6, and can go from there. So a full rotation might look something like, an 8-second debuff, a 6-second debuff, a further crit debuff, an armor break, and a last armor break, right? This rotation that we've done gives the opponent 65% chance to be crit, so that's 65% crit chance to your team at the peak of it, and then a 30% and a 10% armor break on top of it. How much damage that does, we'll discuss in the other video. So these are the core skills for the buff build. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That takes up 5 of your main slots. Thankfully, there's overlap with the weakening build, the armor break build, right? That overlaps here, as well as in Super Beatdown. Now, Super Beatdown used to have heavy armor damage, and I believe that was patched out um, a week ago. So let's just double check. Yeah. So it now is disabling in back attack, but it no longer has neutralization on it. So it used to have high neutralization, which I believe they've changed to a lower level at this point. Probably warranted. The skill was just our best skill, and so from those that fills up 5 of your slots. You have 3 more slots. There are a couple of core abilities. Um, I love this thing at level 10. It's a huge point commitment. It's solid damage, particularly for trash, but it's one of our best movement skills. Oh, whoops. Let's actually put the points in. But it's one of our best movement skills. It's very fast. Right? Lets us get out of things very smoothly and easily. Um, if you can't put 10 points in this skill, it's probably not worth taking. You should look at other movement options. Solid movement options are, our sort of tornado thingy, which I personally just feel is a little bit slow. Um, it also does well at a lower point total. You can give it some attack speed here, right? So speed it up a little bit, or you can give it a little bit more range. You can reduce its cooldown, which brings it in line with our lightning kick, if if you want to put the points in. And then of course there's Phoenix Dive, which is very cool. Excuse me. Phoenix Dive has the advantage of actually taking us off of the battlefield. Oh, wrong skill. Sorry. Takes us off the battlefield, so allows us to actually dodge abilities. You're invulnerable during Phoenix Dive, unlike the other dive, but it doesn't cover much ground. And so in order to make Phoenix Dive really, sing, we need to increase the distance that it goes. Which is this one. Da, da, da. And then we really want this 10-pointer as well. So this one also sort of, is pretty hungry for skill points. You can even make it, happen twice, but even with all of these points, so I started this side, right? I don't even make it halfway across here. Right, so we can compare that to our lightning kick. Right, so we'll start on this little point. Phoenix Dive takes us exactly to the middle. Close enough. Yeah, so exactly to the middle. Lightning kick fully clears it. And we can compare that to our little spiral dash as well. This is with this increased distance on it, somewhere in between. Anyway, so that's just some general discussion and coverage. All of these resources are available. So in the Lost Ark Discord, I've linked this before. So far, it just has Pommel and Crescent. If you want to contribute to the testing, please do. Anyway, that's all we have for today.